Hi, this is John Groders. Welcome to the No Shame Podcast, where we hang out at the intersection of faith and culture. Today's show comes from the floor of the Christian Worldview Filmmakers Guild and Film Festival, a gathering of about 600 industry professionals and aspiring filmmakers held in Franklin, Tennessee.
Have no shame, no, we are not afraid, no shame of the gospel of his name. It's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid, no shame.
We are back at the Christian Worldview Film Festival. I'm John Groders. This is the No Shame Podcast. And at this festival, there are just a plethora of people in the industry, writers, actors, producers, and one of my great friends and one of my favorite actors is my guest right now, Curt Cloninger. Hi, Curt.
Hello, hello.
Hear all those people in the background?
There are hundreds.
They've all come to watch us record this podcast because they heard you were going to be here. So there's a line forming right there.
Yeah, only in our imagination.
Autographs and photos and...
Sounds good anyway.
Well, no, welcome to the No Shame Podcast. We call this at the intersection of faith and culture. And if you're listening to this podcast, Curt and I have worked together on a number of projects. This guy is a wonderful actor, a wonderful writer, but we were just laughing when you just showed up today that you've now become recognized for a particular role that you and I did together. And is it true you were half naked and someone recognized you as a biblical character?
Yeah, I never thought that I would be known by my torso, but I was swimming at the Y the other day, and I swim laps for exercise, and this lady 2 lanes over was with her little kids, and she went, "Hey, look, there's Noah." And it was a little unsettling, actually.
Well, Noah, if you've ever been to a place called the Ark Encounter in Williamston, Kentucky, the Answers in Genesis team, and they built a full-size, full-to-scale Ark in a theme park, and it's been open for 2 or 3 years now, and a lot of people apparently go to the Ark Encounter and see Curt because we did a film that shows on the second deck of the Ark called The Noah Interview, and then a kind of a corresponding film that goes on the third deck called As in the Days of Noah. And in each case, Curt, you're the lead actor. So in the ancient one, The Noah Interview, which is a real-time interview of Noah and his family done by a local hatchet job group, in the time of Noah, you're kind of wearing like a half sash over your torso, if I recall.
Yeah, it was it was like a long linen thing that the costumers would wrap around me every day and tie, and it was really actually kind of comfortable to wear. I thought maybe I should start wearing them all the time.
Well, you got the guns for it. You know, the biceps were showing, and Noah had been building a ship for 100 years, so he was tan and physically fit. And anyway, if you ever do, by any chance, if you're listening to this podcast and you can get a chance to stop by the Ark Encounter, I mean, that Ark is big.
Oh, it's amazing. It's really kind of overwhelming to think that was the actual scale of that boat. It was amazing.
I don't know if this is obvious to some people, but I've noticed that as I walk closer to the Ark, it seems like it gets bigger.
Yeah.
It's like an optical delusion. You know, it's big from a long way away, and then you walk up to it, and it gets even bigger yet.
Yeah,
But
cool.
It's a worthwhile thing. Now, your career, you have been an actor and had an interesting career as an actor in that you've sort of traveled and done solo performances here, there, and everywhere. Tell me about your career.
Yeah, I've written a variety of solo monologue storytelling shows. Most of them are multiple character shows, and they're all bragging on Jesus shows mostly. And I've got one that I do for hospitals. That's a bragging on hospital show. But and I've made a career out of it for over 35 years now, and it's a little weird. I mean, I also am a film and TV actor, so I'll go to auditions in Atlanta where I live, and sitting around for a callback, the other actors will be there. They'll go, everybody's, question is, so what's your day job? And I say, well, I'm an actor. And they go, yeah, but what's your day job? And I tell them what I do, and they just look at me like, what? It's not, most actors don't, at least film and TV actors don't really get what I do in terms of my storytelling solo shows. So it's it's been a sort of an unusual way to make a living all these years.
Well, I am a super huge fan of a handful of talented actors and cool guys like Curt Cloninger who do this. It's I don't even know what to compare it to, but I think you're a troubadour for the gospel. I think you give hope an anthem, as Switchfoot likes to say. Curt came to my church where I lead worship on Sundays a couple winters ago, and you did your Christmas program for our church, which right now I can't remember the name of.
Celebrate the Child.
All right, Celebrate the Child. Tell me about that show, where it came from, and how you do it.
Well, I wanted to create some characters around the Nativity that were I'm trying to remember. Not all of them are mentioned in the Nativity story in the Gospels, but I sort of, in writing my shows about Jesus, I sort of let my imagination go wild, let's let her talk from the stage.
That's
She's
a microphone.
She's using it.
She's telling everyone to leave because they're being too loud in the background of our podcast. That's very nice of her to get on the microphone.
But so the characters in that show are just people around the Nativity that are, most of my characters for my Jesus shows are real earthy, and they're, I try to sort of take a different perspective on some of the characters. So, like one of the characters is a guy, I mean, it's a heavy character for Christmas, but it's a guy about to bury his baby who was killed in the slaughter of the innocents. And it's sort of a railing against God monologue, which is not your typical Christmas monologue.
Now I can tell you, if you're listening to this podcast and you've spent some time in church, at church you might be sort of used to hearing music. We can do music in the church. You're certainly used to hearing preaching. But for some reason, for me, when good drama came in the doors of our church, it felt like something completely fresh and different, because we just don't get that very often. And that show, Celebrate the Child, when that was at our church, we loved it. Our congregation was blessed, and it was a totally unique experience. We just don't experience that in the church very often anymore.
Yeah, that's true, and that's what I love about doing the storytelling kind of things, is that you can sneak up on folks. You can kind of come through the back door of people's hearts and emotions and present truth, but not in a frontal way where it's just right in their face all the time. So hopefully I can sneak up on people. I hope they can, if you have a place, invite Curt. He'll come, and it's worth it. And you can find him at, what's your website, or how do I get a hold of you? Yeah, just my name, CurtCloninger.com.
It's Curt with a C, C-U-R-T, Cloninger also with a C, C-L-O-N-I-N-G-E-R, CurtCloninger.com. I've always heard the term acting is reacting. How do you deal with that when you're a one-man show?
I'll have imaginary characters that I'm talking to in my mind, or a lot of times I'll turn the audience members into a character that I can react from, and I get different reactions from audience members, and so I'll go with that a lot of times, which is fun. It keeps it fresh.
So that's all right. So that's I'm talking about Curt as a solo artist. Some people in life, they don't just go to the job fair in 6th grade and pick out of you want to be a fireman, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher. Nobody probably ever gave you a card that said, you could be a one-man touring drama show that lifts high the cross. How did you ever have the courage or whatever to get into that thing?
I stumbled happily into it. God kept opening doors, and I would stumble through them and go, oh, this looks like a good thing. And it would work, and then I'd stumble through another one. And I had a typical theater. I was a theater major in college, and I did a little bit of typical theater out of college. And the solo stuff just sort of, out of curiosity, I developed a show, and it worked. And I thought, well, maybe I could do this a little more, and it just kept working. And so, I kept doing it. And so, it is really nothing. I didn't have a long-range plan. I'm a terrible businessman, so I didn't have a 1-year, 5-year, 10-year plan about how this was going to work. I just kind of kept doing it, and it's worked. So I'm very thankful.
Do you have a director, or how does do you direct yourself? Do you ever bring in a director?
I bring in a
dramaturg?
director sometime. And some of my stuff I just direct myself. And like one of my shows, my Witnesses show, it's an 8-character show about Jesus, and it has morphed and evolved over the years as I've killed off characters and added characters, and seen audience reaction to characters and sort of adapted according to that. And, had maybe depth of emotion with a character as a character grew, and so it would change. But every once in a while, I'll get a second eye on my stuff to make sure I'm being honest with things.
Now, you also, as you mentioned, you do your travel and you do your solo shows that you write yourself, for the most part, direct. Sometimes, though, you're on sets of anything, television shows, commercials, movies. What's it like to sort of have to transition and listen to a director when you're used to not having to? Can that be tough, or is it good?
I love that. I love having to work into a crew and to work with people. I don't get to do it often enough, and so it's really fun for me when I get to do that. It's a joy, actually.
Well, it's a tribute in a way, and I think this kind of proves it. I mean, Curt, like you said, you live in Atlanta. You happen to be up in Tennessee to visit your daughter, an hour or more north of where we are, and we contacted one another on the phone. I said, well, I'm going to be in Franklin. So he drove down over an hour just to get here during this festival. And I'll tell you why. It's because when we got to work together, we become friends.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
absolutely.
what happens in this business. And I was looking forward to Curt coming. Not only did we become friends, but Curt takes a script, and he doesn't just move the boots around and read the script. He thinks about it, and he asks questions. And in the case of As in the Days of Noah, you are a significant writer on that project. You really brought so much humor and other things to that project.
Yeah, that was fun. It was fun getting to work on rewrites on that particularly, because you let me bring myself to it, and that was fun. I mean, that's not the case in every situation.
Well, as I like, this is a great festival where they talk about. We just heard Stephen Kendrick give an address. Stephen and Alex Kendrick are the Sherwood films that's done Fireproof and War Room and Facing the Giants and Courageous, and they're working on it. And he just went through a long presentation of kind of the way they run the set on their movies. That they are very intentional about creating unity and expectations where everybody will be appreciated and celebrated in their departments. And he just said they spent a whole day, the first day of their production, what they call boot camp. And now, if you know anything about production, nothing costs more than a day. Yeah. It's like, imagine you have to throw a wedding reception, for 300 guests, 50 days in a row. If you ever had a daughter get married. But they spend a day before they roll the cameras, and they get in a boot camp where they get to know each other, and they pray for each other, and the crew meets each other, and the cast meets the crew, and the outline of the story is kind of explained. It's unusual, but I think I felt as he was talking a huge sense of that is so smart.
Oh, I haven't done a lot of typical film and television, but I've done some. I've walked onto a set where I was a day player. I had one scene with 8 lines or whatever. And I walked into the set. Very rarely does anybody talk to anybody.
Right.
And you're sitting in the green room, or you're sitting at the crafty table, and you might, compare notes a little bit, but you don't know anybody. And you don't know what the story is. You're given sides for the day. You walk in, you do your lines, you hope you do them well. But there's no sense of unity. And hopefully my ministry in those environments are just to love on the people that I bump into that day. It's not necessarily the TV show that's going to change anybody's life. It's more relationship building on the day. But there's not that sense of unity in those situations, at least not to the extent that Kendrick was talking about.
Let me take us back for a minute to the set. We were shooting in Cincinnati, Ohio, in a big studio on a 100-foot by 100-foot green screen, because we were trying to create an environment that nobody knows exactly what it was like, which is the pre-flood world. So what did the topography look like in the time of Noah? You can't go to Wikipedia and look up wardrobe in the pre-flood world. It was a bizarre design that we had to create this movie called The Noah Interview. And here was another bit of a conundrum. You know, it's kind of a family-friendly place, this Ark. You know, it's kind of like Disney for Christians, about when the entire world was murdered by God. There's an irony in the subject matter going on here. The judgment of God is just kind of a heavy subject. And in the context of the film, we had Noah and his wife and his son. They were kind of working in the latter stages of Ark construction, and this journalism team from the local tabloid comes to do what we clearly have set up as a hit job on Noah. He's considered a nut. This isn't favorable journalism. He's going to be treated about as well as any Christian is treated oftentimes. And so it's a bit of an adversarial situation. So the crew that was coming to do the filming, prehistoric, one of them was a sketch artist, one of them was a scribe, and then one of them was the reporter. So interesting characters, all three of them. The reporter, Ada, played by the marvelous actress Sasha Higgins, she was dressed, I think, a little like Elvira.
Yeah.
Kind of had this black flowing dress made of strips of leather, and she had like red,
she was scary.
paint makeup on her face,
Yeah.
and her hair was dyed black. And she was just very authoritarian and austere and arrogant and flippant. Her scribe was a guy that I think finished second in the Mr. Universe contest in America, Caden Vu. This guy could have picked both of us up with one hand.
Got tattoos everywhere.
Oh, just sculpted body. And he plays in a lot of bad guy movies because he just has the biceps the size of my thighs. And then the sketch artist was played by a marvelous Spanish comedian named Gonzalo. And he was just cracking me up anytime he opened his mouth. He cracked me up. So those three, we wanted them to be, likable characters so much that you wanted to watch the movie, but I didn't want to have any kids going, well, is God going to kill those three wonderful people? Would he kill Bambi and her mother? Weird conundrum in that they were supposed to represent a world that was violent and evil all the time.
Yeah.
And yet, you kind of can't really do violent and evil at a theme park. Anyway, that's a long setup to say, I thought what was really cool that happened, and I don't even know everything that happened, but while we were shooting other scenes, Sasha Higgins and you, Curt Cloninger, sat in a green room and kind of got to know each other. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was, when you hired me to play this part, you never know necessarily who the other actors were going to be, and I didn't know any of these actors. One of them actually, one of the secondary actors was from Atlanta that I've seen in Atlanta since then, but the guy that got in a knife fight guy. And so I didn't know, who the actors were. Well, we go to the green room, and I mean, I've been on some blatantly Christian films before where it's pretty, it's like a Baptist church reception. And well, this was not that, because these other three actors in the green room, to my knowledge anyway, were not believers, not followers of Jesus. They were typical actors who are making a living in theater and have a worldview that's very different from mine. But they were delightful. Mm-hmm. And so it was really interesting that as Noah, I got to explain to the interviewer sort of the heart of God. And as an actor, I got to do the same thing with this other actors. And it was really unique to get to do that. And I follow her on Facebook. Every once in a while, I'll hear a little something from her. And we didn't leave best friends by any means, but she did get to hear the love of God in this thing. And it was just very unusual. I thought it was really fun, and I love that you cast it that way.
Well, when you do a film project, we spent a week or however many days together working and doing all the stuff that we do, and we had a good time, and it was well organized. And the fruit of that work has been seen literally by millions of people.
Yeah.
Millions of people every year, hundreds of thousands every year, are going and they watch these films. So it's a strange world that we live in the media.
Yes.
We work for a couple of days, and then for a decade, millions of people get to see the performances.
Yeah.
In a way, however, you don't personally get to touch any of those millions of people. You got to touch a handful of actors on a set for a week in Cincinnati in the summer.
Yeah.
And that's what we remember.
Which is really a delight. And it's fun. When I go do one of my live shows, I mean, I'll go, sometimes I have an audience of 50 people, sometimes I have an audience of 5,000 people or 20,000 people. I mean, I've done all of that. Mm-hmm. And I go and I fly low and I drop my carpet bombs on an audience, hopefully my carpet bombs of truth and emotion, and then I get on a plane and fly home. And I don't get to see the result of that.
Nope.
But it is a unique experience, especially like this Ark Encounter Noah film, because we shot that thing and it's gonna have a shelf life. I mean, it's going to be playing at that Ark for a while, and people will wander in and out, and they'll have a reaction to it, So that's I haven't even been up to see it since we finished filming. So I'll take my wife and my daughter and son-in-law up there at some point. But it's really a joy to know that this thing's going to have a shelf life that's going to hopefully make a difference.
Now I'm gonna do the unthinkable here. I'm going to impersonate the actor who's actually sitting right here, but I didn't cue him up for this. But there's a scene in this movie where you're sitting there, and the journalist comes in and says, "Okay, Noah." So, and he's sitting, and behind him, probably a quarter mile in the distance, on the hill, at the top of the hill, sits this 90% completed Ark. And she looks at him and she says, "All right, so Noah, so what is this thing, this monstrosity that's sitting over your left shoulder here? What is this thing?" And what do you say?
It's a boat.
It's a ship. And boat. And she goes, you say it's a ship. And she says, "A ship? Well, there's no oars and there's no sails. It's not like any kind of ship I ever seen before." And he says,
"Okay, I'm trying to remember what I said."
"Well, call it an Ark then."
Oh, yeah.
It's Jewish. So how did you say it? You're like a Jewish...
I can't even remember. I messed with it. I wanted to make him... I didn't want to make him soft and sweet and nice and kind.
No, he was irascible.
I wanted to make him very irascible, very gruff, and not... I want him to push back a bit.
Yeah, which made him fun. He didn't want to be interviewed. He didn't have time for the interview.
Yeah.
It was an interruption to his day. I remember what you said. She says, "So what is this thing?" He says, "It's a ship." She says, "It's a ship with no oars and no sails. Not like any ship I've ever seen." And he goes, "Well, all right, fine. Call it an Ark then." And she says, "Well, what's an Ark?" And he says, "It's a ship with no oars and no sails." He's irritated. I like the irritated Noah.
And it was fun and a really interesting challenge to, when you shoot on green screen, of course, the Ark wasn't back there. There was nothing back there.
Right.
It was a big green wall. And so, in post-production, you put all the magic in there and put the Ark in there. And so you got to know where it is all the time, on the wall. And there's a lot of little technical points that could get a little dicey.
Well, it's fun for me to recollect those days. I'm proud of the work because it was wonderful to work with that team. I hope, Curt, we can work together in the near future. We're all trying to pitch things and get things greenlit from some way or another, but working with guys like Curt in this business is what makes this a joy. It's probably true in any business, no matter what you do. If you can work with people that make everything they touch better, and you make everything you touch better. You make the script better, you make the set run better, you make the backstage run better, because you talk to the other actors. And if anybody out there is casting, Curt is the guy you want. If you can bring him to your church or your hospital or wherever, go on the website and bring him. And if you get a chance to visit Williamston, Kentucky, go visit the Ark. Leave time to see the films on the end of the second deck and the third deck. I don't want to give it all away, but I do know that if you see this guy swimming in his shorts in the pool, you're going to recognize him, and you're going to go, "Hey, that's Noah!"
Yeah, maybe you will.
Well, the band is about to start rehearsing, and they're going to drown us right out. But
Yeah.
I thank you for coming, Curt. It's
Oh,
been
this was great.
a joy to have you, and we can do this again.
It was a very serendipitous treat for me.
All right, this is John Groders. That's the No Shame Podcast. Our guest, Curt Cloninger. That's with a C. We're out.
Have no shame.